What's most unfortunate is that if you don't actually put a request in to the Human Rights Commission, that nothing gets resolved, nothing happens.
Tonight, taken to task, a Montreal child agency under scrutiny after years of failing Inuit kids from up north.
I'm the first Indigenous person to do so in almost 30 years.
Politics in a northern town, an Indigenous woman throws her hat into a municipal election ring. And while on a state visit to Germany, Mary May Simon speaks out about what it means to be Canada's first Indigenous Governor General. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. A long-standing volunteer with the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre has been let go from his position over photos he posted to his Facebook page of Nazi flags and memorabilia. Michelle Karlenzig has this story and a warning to our viewers: some may find these images upsetting.
Keith Taylor has been a volunteer patient advocate with the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre for 12 years. He was let go of that position this week over photos posted to his Facebook page almost a decade ago depicting Nazi flags and a head of Hitler bust. One photo showed 3 unidentified children in war helmets with a Nazi flag in the background with the caption, "Training them young." He says he can understand why the photos look offensive, but explains he meant training the kids in war history.
It was unfortunate. That was in what I call the flag room. I guess a bad angle, but if you look at that picture, the kids are the one child. These are my relatives are wearing. There's no Nazi stuff except the flag.
Taylor said he had plans to open a museum and has a passion for history.
My keen interest on history, especially military history. I mean, as a kid, I was always watching war movies and drawing tanks and.
He says he's not a Nazi and there was no malice or ill intentions behind the photos. The Thunder Bay Hospital said they could not discuss the details of the incident, but in an email to APTN said in part, "With thousands of staff and volunteers, it is unrealistic to monitor social media for infractions. However, if a concern is brought forward, Human Resources would investigate and report back to senior leadership with findings and recommendations." That investigation has concluded, and the aforementioned volunteer is no longer affiliated with TBR-HSC. Thunder Bay has been under the microscope for racism in Canada, including accusations of racism in the Thunder Bay Health Sciences Centre. Taylor says he understands why the hospital made the decision they did and has since removed most of the photos. He also says he's sorry.
To those people, I would apologize. There's no intent for those people to see those pictures. I mean, eventually they probably would have in a different context, in a more of a museum context and educational context. I could see why people are offended. There's no ifs and buts about that.
Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
It's a relationship that continues to deteriorate between Native Women's Shelter in Montreal and the Youth Protection Agency that works with the city's Indigenous population. Weeks after saying they would no longer work with Batshaw Youth and Family Services, the shelter is now asking for an inquiry into the agency's services and employment practices. Tom Fenario explains.
Located in the northernmost reaches of Quebec is the Inuit territory of Nunavik, a unique place where Inuit culture is strong. But like many remote regions, they lack for services. Flying over 1,000 kilometers to Montreal is often the only option for help. But allegations are they are not getting what they need from a youth agency there.
Can we talk about the children that are not allowed to talk to their parents in front of a social worker in Inuktitut? Can we talk about the social workers that have these derogatory comments that they talk to our workers about Indigenous people? Can we talk about these issues first? Because that's a problem.
Naguset is the executive director of the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. She says after 8 years of trying, she is done trying to talk to the Youth Protection Agency that works with Indigenous children in Canada's second largest city.
What's most unfortunate is that if you don't actually put a request in to the Human Rights Commission, that nothing gets resolved, nothing happens.
The shelter has teamed up with the Center for Research Action on Race Relations, a civil rights advocacy group, to request an inquiry into Batshaw Youth and Family Services. Specifically, they want the Quebec Human Rights Commission to look into Batshaw's lack of services for Indigenous kids in care, as well as their hiring practices.
Currently, there's only one social worker within Batshaw that is Indigenous.
But Batshaw says they've been trying for over a year.
At the moment, we have 2 open positions for Indigenous workers, and there have not been any applicants for the positions.
How Batshaw serves as Indigenous clientele has been subject to other criticism. Following accusations that Inuit in care were not being allowed to speak in Nuktitut, a Quebec Human Rights Commission investigation concluded that Inuit youth in Montreal were being denied their right to cultural preservation. The commission recommended that the right of Inuit youth to freely speak their mother tongue be reaffirmed and that this right be clearly written into the codes of conduct. Batshaw says that youth are only asked to refrain from speaking in Nuktitut under very specific circumstances.
We allow the children to speak in their native tongue. The only time that we would ask them not to is when it's flagged to us that their safety might be at risk.
Batshaw did receive a vote of confidence recently from Makivik, the organization that represents Inuit from Quebec. In this press release, Makivik says that discussions are underway to improve the situation for Nunavik youth who are under the care of the center. But the Native Women's Shelter says Batshaw has had more than enough time to address issues that have been raised in multiple studies and reports.
They have the solutions because we've given it to them already. And it's just a lack of will or, I don't know, ego. I don't know what it is because it's beyond us.
I would disagree that nothing has been done. A lot of things have been implemented. Let's not forget we've been in a pandemic for 18 months.
The response for the request for inquiry is expected in the coming weeks. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
Thanks, Tom. We want to hear about what you think about any of the news stories that we bring you. Here's how you can weigh in. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The Yukon is holding municipal elections Thursday, and in Whitehorse, an Indigenous candidate is running for City Council, the first to do so in 30 years. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
Michelle Friesen is one of 17 candidates running for Whitehorse City Council. But she's not your average politician.
I'm the first Indigenous person to do so in almost 30 years.
Friesen's family is from the Tonquachon Council in Whitehorse. If elected, she'd be the first Indigenous person to serve on council since Ed Schultz in 1991, where he served one 3-year term. Friesen says 30 years on, it's time for an Indigenous council member.
Yeah, I think having diverse perspectives is really vital to any leadership, and I hope that I can bring that to City Council.
Friesen previously ran for the NDP for Whitehorse's Mountain View riding during the 2021 territorial election. She lost to Liberal incumbent Jeannie McLean, but she says the experience gave her the confidence to run for council.
That was one of the things that really helped me in understanding where people saw those leadership qualities in me, and that made me feel more confident to step into this realm.
The issues Friesen's focused on are affordable housing, accessibility, and climate change.
I'm Michelle Friesen, and I'm running for Whitehorse City Council.
With voters heading to the polls on Thursday, Friesen is wrapping up her campaign. She hopes running for council will inspire other Indigenous Yukoners to do the same in the future.
Yeah, I hope that by stepping forward, I can encourage diversity in leadership and inspire other women and Indigenous youth to see that we can and we should be in these spaces where decisions about our future is being made.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Well, we need to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to head to Germany, where Inuk Mary May Simon, Canada's first Indigenous Governor General, continues her very first state visit. We are there too. Stay with us. Governor General Mary May Simon continued her state visit to Germany today. She sat down with APTN's Lindsay Richardson for an in-depth interview. Here's part one of that interview about her interactions with German officials.
Right Honourable Mary May Simon, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. Our audience has been looking forward to hearing from you.
It's my pleasure.
Obviously, we've been in the grips of the COVID-19 pandemic for well over a year now, but we've also been having very painful discussions about Canada's legacy of residential schools. When you arrived here in Germany, what was the awareness like through people that you've been speaking to during your visit?
Well, there's a lot of awareness about reconciliation in Germany, about Germany. And when I met with leaders, we had an opportunity to talk to each other about some of the initiatives that we have to undertake to address the wrongs of the past. And we've also talked about how difficult it is to talk about these issues. And you know, the president of Germany told me that he goes every day to an event that addresses reconciliation. And as Governor General, I hope I'll be able to do that as well.
Canada has been, on an international scale, considered to be peacekeepers. And now that image is kind of in upheaval because of this dark chapter of history that's being discussed. Do you think it's changed how people view Canada?
It may have, and I think around the world there are different things that come up through history that have happened in the past. And they may be positive things, or they may be very negative things. But once that happens, I think it's important for the country that is going through that experience to deal with it. I think the truth has to come out, and it has to be dealt with. So I think Canada is doing that now, and I think through time we'll regain our importance as we have in the past on the international level.
Now, moving away from politics, I'm curious about the necklace you're wearing. You wore it during the first dinner with the president. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, this is made out of seal skin, and it's from Iqaluit. And I had a friend bring it to me because I wanted something to wear in Germany that was made from seal, because it portrays our culture and a very important part of Inuit culture, that we depend on the seal for food and for many other things, and also for the fur. So we use the whole animal. And when they ask me about my necklace, I get to talk about it like that. So I'm educating people in Germany about who we are, as well as learning about Germany. So it's been a really very good dialogue.
That's good to hear, because the sale of sealskin products is obviously very controversial here in Europe and has been for some time.
Doesn't stop us from showcasing it. We always have done that, and we will continue to do that.
Now, are there plans to visit Indigenous communities during your tenure as Governor General?
Very much. That's probably my priority. But there are two things. I'm Indigenous. I'm an Indigenous Governor General, but I'm also Indigenous, but Governor General for Canadians. So, I have to look at it in a way where my priority is always Indigenous issues because I'm Indigenous, but at the same time I need to remember, and I do, that I am representing all Canadians. So part of that priority includes diversity and inclusion, and that's some of the work that we'll be doing as well.
Your Excellency, Nakume, for your time. It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure to be here.
We'll have part two of that sit-down with Governor General Mary May Simon. Switching gears to talk about domestic issues here in Canada, from preserving Indigenous languages to battling systemic racism. That's going to be on tomorrow. Well, a new study by Justice Canada has revealed that Indigenous people accused of crimes are much more likely to be locked up than white offenders. Researchers analyzed how two groups fared at different stages in the justice system over a 10-year period. The results are grim, but unfortunately not surprising. Vicky Chartrand is an associate professor at Bishop's University. Thanks for joining us, Vicki. You know, we've heard about overrepresentation of Indigenous people in prison for more than a decade now, but this new study shows that courts are a big part of the problem, maybe more so than people had thought. Who's responsible for making sure that courts are fair and aren't adding to this problem?
Well, thanks to you, Melissa. And yeah, I think courts have, I think we've always known that the courts were just as much as part of as a problem. And since we've had, you know, the introduction of Gladue principles and the Section 718, which is the formation of Gladue principles, they should be looking at the impacts of colonialism and the hardships that Indigenous people experience. But in my own experiences with and research around the courts is that when we do look at, even when we do look at Gladue principles, that security takes precedence. And so that the Gladue principles are, although consulted and looked at, then they still, Indigenous people still end up being charged or convicted as a result.
Yeah. You know, you study the links between colonialism and Indigenous incarceration rates. Why is it important to bear that context in mind while we're looking at these numbers?
Well, yeah, some of my own research showed that historically Indigenous people were very rarely incarcerated, at least at the federal level. And it wasn't until the 1960s when we started to see the receding of assimilation policies that at the same time we actually also started to see the incarceration of Indigenous people. So from 1960 and beforehand, it was 1% to 2% rates of incarceration, and the prisons were doing everything they could to get Indigenous people out of the prison system. And today we see quite the opposite, is that every year since 1960, the incarceration rate has only increased, despite all the attempts, whether it's Gladue or restorative justice principles, or even introducing Aboriginal culture and healing lodges. We only see the incarceration rates increase despite that. And I think that a lot of that goes back to not looking at the important colonial context in which Indigenous people are still trying to survive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is jobs for a lot of Canadians too, keeping Indigenous people locked up. Vicki, I thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts on this, and it'll be interesting to see what these, you know, this study, where it goes from here and what sort of policy changes that we see.
Yeah, well, thanks to you, Melissa, and good luck with everything.
Thanks. It's time for another break, but when we come back, highlights from today's In Focus, where we met some incredible entrepreneurs doing big things and sharing advice to other would-be bosses. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Evelyn Reynolds pulled this from her trail camera. She caught a glimpse of a tagged mother cub and her 4 almost grown cubs. This looks like both majestic and terrifying at the time. Great catch there, Evelyn. Be sure to send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got 10 and some showers for St. John's, 15 and sunshine for Halifax. Happy Valley Goose Bay, 6 with a chance of showers. Kuujjuaq makes a setting cloud and 7 degrees expected there. Montreal, rain and 15 degrees. Chibougamau, 4 and showers. Ottawa, 15 and chance of showers, lots of cloud. And Sault Ste. Marie, 2, 9 degrees. Makes a setting cloud and 4 for Sioux Lookout, expected 3, and some flurries maybe for Kapuskasing. 0, makes a setting cloud for Thompson. Norway House, 2 and sunshine. 5 for Barons River and Dauphin, 6 for Winnipeg and Brandon. 14 in sunshine for Swift Current, 5 over in Yorkton. 5 in Buffalo Narrows as well, sunny skies there, same with Uranium City. High level sunshine and 7 degrees. Fort Chip, 6 and sunny. 12 in sunshine for Edmonton, 16 in Medicine Hat. 14 and sunny for Kamloops, 11 in sunshine for Quesnel. 10 and sunny for Prince George, 6 in sunshine for Dease Lake. Mayo, sunshine and 5 degrees. Whitehorse, 4 and sunny. Norman Wells, 1 with sunshine. Wattie and Yellowknife and Fort Simpson, both 6 degrees. All 3 of them are 6 degrees. Tuktoyaktuk, 0, sunshine. -4 and a mix of sun and cloud for Baker Lake. Nuyot, -5, mix of sun and cloud. Igloolik, flurries expected there, -7. Clyde River, -3 and flurries. Well, thinking about being your own boss or looking for an Indigenous business to support, well, today's In Focus checks all of those boxes as we chatted with business owners in a variety of industries about starting up and expanding a business and how maybe you should too. Take a look.
You'll learn a lot in the first couple of years of your career, and things to do and things not to do, of course. And after getting into my own business, the learning, of course, never stops. So there's a lot of days where I've made mistakes, but that's how I've learned. And but very challenging when I first began. Definitely, you hope that the patients walk through the door or phone your clinic because it's brand new and nobody knows about it. So there's a lot of stress involved when you first start, and a lot of late nights and early mornings. There was for me anyway. So I'm happy I did what I did, and looking back, I'm happy I did what I did, but definitely challenging.
If you're going to do something, commit to it and do it. You can shoulda, coulda, woulda all your life, but until you do, how do you know?
Yeah.
Right? What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail. So you fail, you learn, and you just move on. I'm just creative, and this is my art. And if I can't do art, then I'm just not a happy person. Mm-hmm. And I also like to feed people, and I want to see everyone else happy. So, chocolate makes you happy.
So I really believe that we need a common ground, so to speak. So when people are out in nature, they're vulnerable, they're nervous. It's not natural to modern civilization unless they are part of that unique set of people who like to be outdoorsy. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing is really allowing people to come and embrace our landscapes the way that Indigenous have for time immemorial, as they're saying.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is sharing story and sharing all of the things that we're experiencing as humans on the land, our connection to the land, our connection to weather and temperament, being comfortable, building resilience, and then giving them a deeper understanding of what it's like to not have modern amenity, but to still be comfortable. And then from that, we start building the story of understanding and compassion for what changed and how modern civilization impacted Indigenous people across Turtle Island.
Well, an amusing moment at the Vatican today as a young boy stole the show at the Pope's weekly audience. The 10-year-old walked up to the pontiff during introductory prayers, asking for his white skull cap. Francis greeted the boy, and he was eventually given a skull cap of his own before leaving the stage to a round of applause from the audience. The Pope later praised, quote, the spontaneity and freedom of children. You can watch that episode that you just saw of In Focus on our website. You can also download it as a podcast and listen while you just go about your daily business. aptnnews.ca/podcasts is where you can find all of our podcasts. Well, we are out of time for your national news tonight. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night.